Meet Ollie. He's a co-partner of Slingshot Content, which is a marketing agency that's currently doing about $150,000 a year, and he wants help scaling up to $250,000. Ollie sells content strategies to business owners that are struggling to really see results from their content. In today's episode of The Lion's Den, we systematically break down exactly what's going on within Ollie's business so that we can figure out exactly what levers to pull that'll help him scale to $250,000 a year faster than ever. Ollie's first kind of starter package is about £1,500, and this includes 4 sessions where basically they'll work with you to help create your flagship piece of content. The content that's going to basically make your brand well known. It's going to allow your content to be higher leverage, more effective, so that you can grow and scale your business. From there, the goal is to be able to upsell them to packages which are like 2 to 3K a month, where they actually help them to implement this content and make sure that they're managing and uploading regularly. In terms of the pathway of scaling to 250K a year, like what particularly you want to sell more of is the monthly retainers.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. So that pays the bills. The one-time things, obviously they're one-timers. They're nice little cash injections, but they don't do a lot for the company.
Yeah, which makes sense. It's 100K a year that you want to add on. If you're doing that over a month is 8,300. So that over 2,500 a month clients is going to be 3.3 clients. Yeah. So here's just a quick thing that I did. He said that he want to go from 150K a year to 250K a year. So I broke it down into how many clients a month more do they actually need. It turns out they need about 3.3 clients, which is about, you're going to need about 4 clients to actually bridge that gap between where they are now and where they need to be. Okay. Now, 4 clients extra isn't that much. Right? So immediately it just makes the goal a lot more feasible. It also means like, okay, if you know how many clients you need, you can then work backwards and be like, well, if I need 4 clients, this is how many calls with leads I need to have. If my close rate is this, then I can like figure out how many leads I need to generate, and then like you can figure out exactly what your inputs need to be if you can like actually understand where you want to be. A lot of business owners, the reason why they don't scale is because they don't know exactly how many customers that they want to bring on. They don't know how much money they want to make. And as a result, they end up just doing lots of different things, hoping that this will result in some sort of customers, rather than following a strategic plan where they can actually calculate, well, yes, if we do these inputs, it's going to lead to this result, which means that I'm actually going to get the financial impact that I wanted to get when I started this kind of phase of growth for my business. So understand that we need 4 clients. Like we need to generate 4 clients for Ollie. It's just really basic information and really, really simple for us to say like, okay, great, now we know what we actually need to do. What do you think's stopping you from going from 150 to 250?
Purely the amount and how often we can get in touch with a new account to sell.
How many leads do you get a month?
KPI sheet at the minute says this month was 5, and as it loads, sign me out for some reason. Last month was 3. I think month before that was 2. It's like average-ish 3 on the grossing up, because we've both joined the networking group, which has helped. But to give you the historical, like 90 days, probably about 3.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. To begin with, Ollie says that the biggest problem that he's facing within the business is that he's not speaking to as many potential customers as he would like to. They currently receive most of their leads from a networking group, which him and his co-partner are both in. Over the last 3 months, Ollie and his team have only generated 10 leads, so not a lot to work with. However, they have still managed to sell these people. They have still managed to close a few big packages, which is keeping the business going. But in terms of getting to 250K a month, we really need to ramp that number of leads up. Where are they coming from?
So March's one was a referral, was one of the leads, and that's one of the ones that signed. Another one was a referral that didn't sign. Another one was some sort of LinkedIn drumming up, mingling from me. Another one was a friend who I approached, and the other one which we signed was the networking group.
Okay. Now here, Ollie breaks down exactly where his leads are coming from, but the truth is, as he says it, I start to realize that these are fairly unreliable sources. It's not predictable. We don't know exactly that he's actually going to get more leads next month. It's almost like it's just chance, right? And that's what a lot of business owners, especially when they're fairly like small, they just experience that, where it's like, I don't know how much money I have to spend. I don't know how many calls I need to get on. It's so unpredictable that it's just really hard to grow a business like this, okay? So the way that you can somewhat overcome this, and Ollie says this as well, like he's very aware that it's just about doing the volume now, right?
And he said that he needs to be on more calls. They just need to go through, they need to thrash out lots of calls, and that's exactly what he needs to do, right? But alongside doing lots of calls, he should also be collecting data on these calls. How many calls was it on this month? How many of those calls led to one-to-ones? How many of those one-to-ones led to referrals? How many of those one-to-ones led to a sales call? How many of those did we close, right? When it's small, when you're like early stage, it's so unpredictable, right? That's why you have to push volume. You have to select the channel. And if networking is what works for Ollie and that's what they want to invest in and that's what they think would work, great. Double down on that channel, but get the data. Yeah, like get the information about what's going on, because that, again, is going to help you to make better decisions. So many people try to grow businesses without the correct data. And it's like your decision-making process is only going to be as good as the data you collect. If you collect bad data or don't collect data, you can guarantee the decisions that you're going to make aren't going to be as strong. Okay? If I'm trying to make decisions about my diet and what I should be eating next week, but I've got no idea what I've just ate the week before and no idea what's in my kitchen and no idea what's available in supermarkets, then it's going to be really hard for me to actually make an informed decision about what I should go buy, what I should cook, what I should replace within my diet, right? You need to have this information. And that's what, again, just reiterating that to Ollie, I think it's a nudge, right? Ollie knows what he's doing generally. The jump from 150K to 250K is not huge. A lot of it is just getting the basics even more correct.
And in terms of qualification for a lead, like what do you count as a qualified lead? Is anyone that's interested in your service a lead? Like what's the kind of different barriers?
If they have interest, just because the disparity in how open it can be, where who we meet is very much down to chance because of this group or just like clients or getting a referral from a client. If there's interest, then we can sell and we see it as a viable one, then we'll market. We sort of could be some more stringent on the ICP. People have bought in a really big range. So it's been, that's been a sort of a weakness and a strength in some ways. So it's kind of anything that gets given to us that seems legitimate, that we could see a real path that they could purchase and that we could help. So it's kind of fluffy sounding, but there's not that many that we disqualify just because we don't get that many that would be wrong.
So Ollie's current ICP is quite vague. They don't actually have a specific set of people like they're trying to sell to. It's almost just anyone that's struggling with content growth that needs some support and is willing and open to receive some help with that.
Here's a networking group that you're in at the moment.
It's pretty big. So the benefit to it is they have different regional chapters, but you don't have to be from them. So you join one and then there's like another 9. So point being, like most of the people that we've met in it, every 2 weeks they meet on a Friday. There's probably like 80 people that come. There's probably a lot more that don't. So we haven't touched really the surface of the one that we've joined, but you're allowed to go to all of them. So the every time I've met someone, they always say, "Oh yeah, like go to each one," because every time you just get another chance to meet someone. You're not stuck in one or so. And if that's if you could conceivably go to all 10 chapters over the course of 2 weeks, it's 5 a week. You meet 2 people per person, you're meeting 10 people per person. If I go as well, that's 20 people. Doesn't mean anything. But per event, I probably book 5 follow-up networking one-on-ones. So then that would be 5, that would be 25. Obviously, my calendar can't deal with it at that point. But you get the math. Like the more we do, the infinitely quicker.
This is another interesting point that Ollie brings up. He could get 25 calls booked in within like a week or 2, right? Which, to be fair, if networking into a game, do it, right? Because if you can figure out like, okay, this is a potential prospect, this is someone that might know someone for me, this is a relationship that I'm building so that I can turn into something, then realistically, you need to get as many of these calls booked in as possible, right? However, what I would also recommend for Ollie is going back to that ICP point. If he can niche down exactly who he's looking for, he can eliminate a lot of the calls that he's going to have. So for example, if those 25 calls are spread across like 7 different industries, but then he decides that, well, actually, I want to focus on this particular industry, or I want to focus with business owners that are making between X and Y, it makes it much easier for him to say like, okay, this call is worth my while because I'm dealing with a more qualified lead. Right now, Ollie doesn't know exactly what a qualified lead looks like, other than there's someone that's actually interested and could potentially buy their service, right? Like a more qualified lead, like the more you can niche it down, the easier it's going to be for him to be able to like say, okay, is there someone that is worth being on my calendar? Because he's going to need good calendar hygiene. If there's so many people that he could speak to, he needs information on what can I do to eliminate the bad leads and keep in the good leads, right? And a really practical way of doing this is, for example, for us, a lot of the business owners that we try to focus on working with are doing 5 to 8K a month and want to scale to like 20 to 50K, okay? If we have a form that goes out and say like, hey, book in a call with me, and it says like, okay, I'm going to book in a call, and I ask them what their revenue is, and they say, it's 1 to 2K a month, then I might just not allow them to go to the booking stage. Or I might book them on for a shorter period of time and say like, okay, because you're really early stage, it's just going to be a 15-minute call. And they don't need to know this, right? It's just conditional logic that you have on your calendar. It's just a 15-minute call instead of a 60-minute call. Because if it's someone that's more developed, you probably want to spend more time with them. Whereas if it's someone that's really early stage, it's networking, do you know anyone that could help us, blah, 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 right? You get the point. But again, like this comes back to really like just nailing your ICP so that you can have more qualified calls with people. Otherwise, you're just going to be on calls, and you're never going to know, like, is this actually a worthwhile call?
Obviously, like getting 5 leads a month immediately, like that seems to be like the constraint, and that's what we've agreed on as well. Yeah. So I want to dig more into that very, very soon. However, I do want to quickly just go through the sales and the delivery side of things, just so we've got a little bit more context, if that's all right.
Yep.
Yeah. So in terms of sales calls, do you have like a sales call log where you're tracking the number of sales calls that you have as well, or is that kind of like merged into the networking calls?
From the networking calls, just because some of them don't translate to that, but we'd call it, if it's a lead, we've had a meeting with them in some way, and we have all of the fathoms for all of them, so they're all rewatchable.
Perfect. And are you tracking the number of sales calls that you have per month?
It should probably be a different line item in our KPIs thing, but it's merged with the leads number.
Right.
Because we've definitely spoke to all of them, but we might not in some cases, and then we wouldn't know that.
Yeah. So it's definitely something that I'd recommend doing as well. It also gives an indication of like qualification of the leads. Because the next thing that I'll ask you is like, okay, out of the number of leads that you spoke to, how many did you book in calls with? Out of the number of calls that you had, how many did you close? And that's just the kind of like the cadence of like how many leads we actually need to get in so that we can bring on 3.3 customers a month. Yeah.
So here's just some basic KPIs that I think a lot of business owners overlook, but it's really important that you get these numbers right, because knowing these numbers is going to help you to understand what you actually need to do to grow the business. Now, I'll give you a real life example of why this is so important. So let's say Ollie gets 10 leads over the next month, but only 2 of those leads are actually qualified leads. And then he said, okay, well, out of those 2 leads, we closed both of them, right? But he said a 20% close rate, because he's sold 2 out of the 10. He's at a 20% close rate. That's really poor. I need to improve my sales skills. And it's like, no, actually, the only reason why you got 20% is because those were the only ones that were qualified for your service. And it's like, okay, you need to be able to tell, like, this is how many leads I generated. This is the actual number of qualified leads that I had. This is the number of leads that I offered. And these are the number of sales calls that I actually gave someone an offer. And then this is the number of offers that I actually closed, right? All this information, and one extra like KPI I'd include on that is cash collected, right? Not only did you close them, but you actually got the sale and you got them to give you the money there and then on the call. Again, really helpful stuff. If you can break things down like from start to finish, the more information you have from that, the easier it is to diagnose exactly what problems you have, and you can focus your attention on solving for that constraint rather than just like saying like, oh, like the constraint is leads and sales. It's like, well, is it number of leads? Is it qualification of leads? Is it number of sales calls booked? Is it number of qualified leads on sales calls? Is it cash collected on these calls? Like there's so many questions that you have. But it's like, if you're not tracking them, you're not actually going to know what you need to fix within the business. So again, just a small nudge in the right direction will go a very long way for Ollie, I'm sure.
On these calls as well, is it a contract that's going out? Is it like just a Stripe link? How does the actual process of closing someone work? Do they just pay on the call? What does that look like?
Not on the call. So what we go and do is we write up the scope of work. It's similarly a copy and paste job because it's the same like brief and same pricing. Very occasionally they'll ask for payment terms, so we have to write that in. It's easy to do. We send that over within a day. We always say like, we'll get this to you within a day. Is there anything that you we're unhappy with, we're unsure of, are you going to have any signing remorse and all that stuff? So they confirm that they're going to do it, get it sent over within a day, they approve and sign the DocuSign, or sometimes we use the Google e-sign now just because it's one less step. And then we schedule a kickoff, which is where we like start the interviewing process for them. We have to start unpicking what would we do, what's the idea going to be, and then from that we kind of let them know that we think we need more info, or we think we need a bit of time to go and think. We'll talk to you in a week, and after that we do our work behind the scenes, and then we bring them back the initial draft, and that's when we're most of the way through it.
Okay. And in this process, have you ever had someone that says, yes, I'm happy to go ahead, then you go off, you give them the contract, and then in terms of like signing on, they take too long to like get back to you, and then they end up kind of like fading away?
Now, the reason why I ask this question is because a lot of the time within sales calls, people can give you the nod, they can say, yeah, I'm happy to go ahead, but then they literally get off the call, something else comes up, they have an unexpected bill, and then boom, they say, no, I don't want to go ahead with this anymore, or I'm going to go ahead next month, but I'm just not ready just yet. And it's like, the easiest thing for you to do in this situation would be to, instead of just like send them a contract and saying pay when you can, is you say like, okay, perfect, if this is all good, I'll write up a contract for you, we'll meet in 2 days time or tomorrow or whenever you can actually get things ready for them, and then you present the contract to them, you get them to read through, you get them to sign it on the call, you get them to pay on the call itself, and then it means that you know that everything's done and you can move ahead. The problem that sometimes will happen, and even from customer experience, is that you want to give people like no time to like fall into like, what is it, like spiraling thinking. So like they don't spiral at all when they're thinking about like, oh yeah, I'm gonna sign on. They're not thinking about losing any money. They're not thinking about all these different objections that might come up. If you give them the time and space to think about it, you want to make it super clear that someone's like, yeah, okay, I want to go ahead, perfect, let's get this call booked in. You go into the call, you present all the information. It means you can handle any additional objections that come up between that day that you actually close them and the day that they actually sign up. And then on top of that, what you can also do is that as soon as someone buys, as soon as someone sends them money, you get excited and you say like, oh look, I'm really excited to work with you. Like this is amazing. Like this is going to be good. This is what we're going to be doing next. And it's like, it's reinforcing the decision that they made to buy with you, right? Like you want to give that onboarding experience, that extra oomph, and you want to just give people that energy so that as soon as they sign on, they're like, yes, I made the right decision. Yeah. And it's so much easier to do that when you're speaking to them directly on a call rather than they message you and then, you know, like a day later, maybe you get back to them saying, oh, thanks for getting that sorted. You know, I'm looking forward to speaking to you next week. It's like you actually speak to them directly there and then the second they pay. It gives them that like that confidence that I'm in the right place. Yeah. So that's my advice to Ollie as well. Just tweak his sales process so that he takes payment on calls and clients are never left in between calls. That's what we call no man's land. And we never want clients to not know when the next time they're going to speak to us.
Do you know exactly the average that people stay with you?
Yeah, it can be found. Yeah, it's a field in our Notion of on the close one area. So there's a days in pipeline and a days in deal. Nice. So as long as we, one way that we can get that wrong is if we expanded a deal or added something different, we would add that as a new line item, just because it's in Notion. So then that would tell you the length of that deal. But it's passable if we wanted to find out like the whole account, what is it? So yeah, we can see that like one client signed July 1st last year. That means 9 months, like, or, you know, 275 days or whatever that is. Like we have that.
Nice. And do you have an end date on there as well? So like when someone leaves, you say like, this is the date that this kind of term ended. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like if it's a initial short term, like 1 month, we will put that in from the rip, just assuming. And then if it expands, it becomes a second line item. So we know that the true like retainer client began at this date and ended at this date.
Perfect. Okay. And then with that, what is the kind of average lifetime of the clients that you work with? How long do they stay with you?
Built all over. We have one that's been like several years, and then there is one for 9 months that's pretty solid. One that has been about 6 months, very up and down. It started off at like $7,000 a month. Now it's at like 1. We want to upsell them a little bit, but we've still worked with them. Blended average, just because there's a few of the starting points, the one-time consulting things that are about a month. I probably wouldn't even count those just because they would skew it. Pretty long, probably a year plus.
Now, to me, this was a really interesting segment. So I asked Ollie a little bit about his LTV for his clients, And he basically told me that he's had clients that are like kind of ranging a lot. So there's some people that have been for longer than a year, some are like 9 months, 6 months, whatever, and then quite a few clients that he's had for like 1 month, right? Now, the truth is, if you've gotten lots of different clients and lots of different packages, it's hard to know exactly how good your service is because you don't know how long someone's staying on that service. He says on average, like we're looking at getting people 12 months, like longer than a year, which if that was actually the truth and we had evidence behind that, that'd be perfect, right? We wouldn't even need to look at like LTV that much. But based on his answers, it's not clear that he's got a really strong LTV at the moment, which is like, okay, the truth is you might, but we need to go back through the notion. We need to go back through the data and understand what your average LTV per client actually is for this retainer service that's 2-3K a month. Okay, it's a really important thing that we understand this. The reason why is when it comes to building a business, you want to build a business back to front. Now, what I mean by this is that you don't want to start with the marketing and sales. When you come to build a business, you want to have a product that is so good that you get the most LTV possible. And if you're unsure about the details about your LTV at the moment, then your business is going to be unpredictable, it's going to be unstable, your delivery is probably going to be quite different person to person, your ICP is going to be different person to person, and as a result, your LTV is going to vary massively. Clients, some are going to stay for a really long time, some are going to go early. We need to know exactly what LTV is, okay? And the reason why is because if we can build a great product and we know how much it sells for, and we know how long people are going to stay with us, we can then use that data to figure out how much can we invest in marketing. So a much more practical example. Let's say Ollie is let's say he's keeping clients for 12 months for 2K a month package. That means each client is worth 24K, okay? Let's say LTGP, so lifetime gross profit, instead of 24K, they spend whatever, 12K in cost. So they actually get 12K of profit per client, okay? So if that's the case, then they can figure out, well, if we get 12K per client, how much money should we spend to acquire these clients? And typically the ratio is you want a maximum of 3-1. Like you don't want it to, a minimum of 3-1. You don't want to be spending, so if it's 12K per client, then divide that by 3 is going to be 4K. The maximum you'd want to spend on a client is £4,000. Maximum you want to spend is £4,000 to actually acquire the client. If you spend £4,000 and that client gives you £12,000, that is generally seen as a good investment, okay? The higher that is, let's say if it's like you spent 1K and you get 12K back, that's a 12-1 return, which is even better. So why the hell would you not go for that, right? But it gives you an indication of how much you can spend on the marketing side of things. So when it comes to LTV and understand this data, I would strongly advise Ollie to like go back and figure exactly what the average LTV is. And if this is a new service, you need to track it like no one's business. Yeah, you need to know exactly how much people are spending on your service, how long they're staying for, because that's going to give you the information that you need to know so that you can understand how much is actually worth pushing and investing in the marketing side. Yeah, really basic concept, but super important, especially if you're leaning into like a little bit of a newer service. Ollie mentioned that he had a couple different services, now he's leaning into this one. So if it's fairly new, it's really important that he gets like the foundations right, which is tracking these numbers and actually understanding how much each client is worth to them.
In terms of the roles between you two guys, you say it's Alex, yeah? Yeah. Give me an overview, like what the responsibilities are for each of you.
Yeah, he's CEO and chief breadwinner. Okay. So that's his job. We've split that up so that he's primarily in charge of that. Mm-hmm. And then there's client work that we both like own, and then there's client work that we sort of divvy up, or I'll take the lead on and he can co-sign if he's sort of the name on the account. But I try and do most of that and be the internal lead for that. So okay, like I free him up to go and do more of that. Is sort of what we're doing in a minute. There's like a piece of work we've like mutually won and we're mutually servicing, but I'm like doing the lion's share of it so that he can go away and do more of this. So we'll buy each other's time back in that way.
Okay.
But anytime I can, obviously I'll not do some selling, but it's his to lead.
So Alex is the one that should be leading the client acquisition and marketing side of things for your business, yeah?
Not marketing, that's probably me. But sales-wise, yeah, he should be doing all the networking that he can and drumming up as much as he can.
Okay, it's interesting because you said marketing's you, yeah?
Yeah.
But the thing that's generating leads is the networking, which is him. So for me, I'm like, well, the networking is the marketing.
Now, as I mentioned at the start, Ollie's actually a co-partner. The other partner is someone called Alex, who I haven't met before. I'm sure he's an amazing guy. However, as we start to like question a little bit more about the leads, one of the things that we identified is that he's the one that should actually be bringing the leads in. Obviously, he's got a lot going on at the moment. He's just moved away from Spain. Sorry, he's just moved to Spain. So I can understand why his head's probably not been like on it when it comes to generating leads. They are starting to build up some momentum and they have closed a couple of big deals, which is perfect. However, if I was in Alex's position, one of the things that I'd be really pushing, and this is what I ask Ollie about here, is what are your targets? Like, how many calls, how many networking events do you want to be on? How many leads are you looking to generate? Having these targets gives you an indication of like, are we on the right track? Yeah. And all credit to Alex. Like, I understand how draining like moving to a different country can be. I've had it happen with a few of my clients in the past, and like I get it's a really big shift. Even culturally, like everything, like there's a lot going on. So all credit to him. But moving forward, one of the things I'd strongly recommend is really setting out what targets they want to hit. And by hitting those, like by having those targets, they're going to be able to understand, like, are we on the right path?
Are you guys tracking how many events you go to? Yeah. You tracking how many leads each event actually brings you, how many calls you're booking and things like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So over this month, what are the kind of targets for actually attending events? Like, what's the kind of structure? What's the kind of focus?
I don't necessarily have a target, nor does he. Maybe we could, but I could see on his diary he had like 4 1-to-1s on last Friday. He went to 3 of them last week. When I can put them on my diary, I'll do that, and I would like to try to plumb in ahead of time. Sort of as we said, like I could go to 3 of them, not 1, or I could go to 4 the following week, not 2, if I know when it is. And then it's after that, like even today, I have 3 networking calls later on. So if I could achieve, I don't want that every single day, I'd probably die. But you know, at the least, that should be what I get per week at the barest minimum.
So Ollie talks a little bit here about his partner Alex, who's actually responsible for the number of leads that he's generating. Obviously, Ollie does a little bit of work on the content. He also does client work alongside Alex. However, when it comes to like being responsible for the lead, Alex is the guy. So one of the things that I think would be really helpful for both of them is to actually start to set goals around how many leads they want to bring into the business a month. The reason why I'm so big on KPIs is because as humans, when we see a KPI, when we see a target, it's so much easier to like try and influence it, right? However, if we kind of just let ourselves like, you know, what is it? It's just wandering to some degree of like, you know, we're trying to hit this goal, but it's like, yeah, but how do we hit this goal? Like, what inputs do we need? What are the things that we actually should be trying to move the needle on? If that's not clear, then it's really difficult to see any kind of progress. So if I was in Alex's position and Ollie's position, I'd be setting targets on how many networking events you want to be hitting, how many calls you want to be booking. And Ollie says in this call that he wants to get 5 to 10 calls booked per week. If he had 5 to 10 calls booked per week, that could be up to 40 calls a month. Him and Alex both do that. That's 80 calls a month. Now, if they both did that and they had 80 calls a month, the likelihood of them getting more sales calls booked in, the likelihood of being referred to the right people, the likelihood of having more touch points and nurturing these people is going to be so much higher. And I can almost guarantee that that's going to bring them more business. The last little bit of marketing advice that I've got for Ollie is that as someone that sells content to people, your content should be absolutely amazing. Like, it shouldn't be a little bit better. It should be 10, 20, 30 times better than everyone else's content. The reason why is because that's what's going to actually build the real authority and trust for you. It's what's going to make it easier for you to get sales. I would say that if you're selling content, realistically, like, yes, you can do networking to get leads. Realistically, your content should be so good that that's what's actually bringing the leads in, right? Like, you're trying to sell content to other people so that they can get more business. Your content should be bringing you a ton of business. That should be your primary source of leads. So that's a little bit about like just what I think. Like, obviously they're doing some new things. They're going to start implementing some new things for their own content, which I'm excited for. However, what I'd really say is that, like, long term, double, triple, quadruple down on the media. Yeah, double, triple, quadruple down on the content. Spend more time on your own content, because that realistically should be the biggest level within your business. That's the skill set that you're selling to other people. So if you can't showcase that you are the best at what you do, then other people aren't going to believe you either. Yeah, the first thing that I would look at if I wanted to hire someone for content is how good's their content. And if they're not good at content, then sure as hell I'm not going to buy from them. So this is again, like I said, a bonus lesson. Ollie's already aware of this. He knows that this is the route that he also needs to take things down. I think that from a consistency point of view, if they want to transition out of like hopping on lots of networking calls where it's like you're speaking to people that sometimes just don't have any intention to buy, and switching to high intent, high quality leads, it's going to be the content that flips that script for you. So as you are starting to grow, really dig deeper into the content side of things. And I think that that's going to be one of the biggest unlocks within the business. And realistically, if you can't prove that you're an incredible content creator through your own content and generate leads from your own content, then I think the business model itself requires a good hard look at it, because that's what you're selling to other people. So you should 100% be able to do that for yourself too. So to summarize, if Ollie wants to scale from 150k to 250k a year, there's a few key things that we recommend he does. Firstly, we recommend that he ups his content so you can actually start generating leads from it. Secondly, get much more clearer on your ICP and the qualification criteria so that your content and networking can be more targeted. Thirdly, set up clear targets on the number of networking events that you want to attend per month. Fourth, collect better data around the number of leads that you generate and the conversions to actually closing them. Fifth, get better data around your client's LTV so you can make more informed decisions about what's best for the business. This is Ollie's experience within the Lion's Den, and I'm super excited to see him scale past 250k a year in the very near future. If you want to be featured on the Lion's Den and want personalized advice on exactly how you should go about scaling your business, make sure you drop a comment below or go onto our website and apply to join the Lion's Den.